G'day everyone, we got a very different video today because we're going to be talking about Starfield now. I haven't played Starfield, so what the hell do I have to talk about with Starfield? Quite a lot actually, and it starts with a very brief history of who Bethesda actually is and why this is actually important to Starfield's critical response, their reasoning behind what they're doing, just everything really. So who is Bethesda? Well, Bethesda Softworks is a video game publisher that started way back in 1986, where they were making their own games, and they were mostly really cheap sports games, one of which is quite beloved by a lot of people, Wayne Gretzky Hockey. I love this game. I adored playing it when I was a kid. It was fantastic. Now, I'm not talking about Wayne Gretzky Hockey from Bethesda, but Wayne Gretzky Hockey that was on a Nintendo 64. This game wasn't made by Bethesda as far as I'm aware, but, you know, it has its roots in Bethesda Softworks because Wayne Gretzky Hockey was originally made by Bethesda Softworks way back in 1989. Now, these were the days before 3D graphics. Everything was 2D and simple and happy. And they would create lots of various sports games, simulators, 2D Terminator games, and other trash, really. And it was very much a basic studio that was barely holding on to the reins of their life. That is until ZeniMax Media came along and started buying them out and putting large investments into them in 1999. And around that time, would you guess what game just got started in development? Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Way back in 1999, this game started its production, and guess who was leading up this production? Why, it's none other than Lying Todd. Now, why do we call him Lying Todd? Because, well, Todd lies a hell of a lot. He lies about what's going to be in the game, he lies about how good the game's going to be, and he lies about AI and everything else in between. He is still, however, a very talented game director and publisher and creator, and he's done a fantastic job, especially in his largest game to date, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Now, why is this important? Well, Morrowind was very different. Not only was this the first game with ZeniMax publishing its money and giving it enough power to actually produce a first 3D RPG game in the series of Elder Scrolls, it's also their first and last investment into this company. ZeniMax after this would no longer be a boon to the company, but rather a chain that would forever hold them back from what they could possibly be. Now, why do I say this? It's because they started using a new 3D engine called NetMirrors, or also known as the Game Brewer engine. And the Game Brewer people made a CAD-based engine, which was essentially using CAD. And if you don't know what CAD is, it is a architectural program used for creating 3D objects so that you can clearly see what the structure is going to look like, and was mostly used in architecture. Then, of course, it was a 3D programmer, so they started using it for video games, and Game Brewer made a CAD program that used CAD to make a 3D engine that was actually playable, and then gave it out to people to use. And one of those people and one of the games was Bethesda and Morrowind. This game would be released in 2002, and Bethesda would use this engine for every single 3D game afterwards. It was used in Oblivion, it's used in Skyrim, it's used in Fallout 3, it's used in Fallout 4, and it's used in Starfield. Now, these aren't exactly the same engine because it has been severely modded and tweaked, but it still has the same fundamental base code and base programming behind it, which leads this engine to be rather a dinosaur when it comes to modern games, because it doesn't have the really good CPU scheduling, the really good GPU scheduling, proper ray tracing graphics that's designed for the engine itself, and it's instead all stapled on. The best way we can describe this engine is, remember Call of Duty? Call of Duty is based on the Quake engine, which is also an extremely old engine, and it's been around for years and years and years and years and years, and they heavily modified it until the point where it wasn't a Quake engine anymore. And that's the same with this Game Bureau engine becoming the creation engine in Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Now this engine change didn't really make the engine any better, it just gave it a lot more features and made it easier to program NPCs, quest lines, objects and artifacts into the game to make it look more modern without actually being more modern. Now recently Call of Duty has left behind their Quake engine and created an entirely new engine which still uses some of the fundamental features from the Quake engine, but is entirely its own beast of burden, where they have straightened out all the spaghetti code and made it work proper. Now we were hoping with Starfield that Creation Engine 2, which it now uses, would be a similar sort of process. And the reason why this process hasn't happened beforehand was because ZeniMax Media was heavily in control, and most famously, Senior Trump, or Robert Trump, refused to give them the money they needed to improve and recreate their engine to be efficient and actually working. And it's now been in such a state for so long, it requires an enormous amount of money and R&D in order to get this engine to a point where it can actually use these modern CPU scheduling, modern AI, modern ray tracing, and just modern game development in general. And this is going to be a huge issue not only for Starfield, but its next game, Elder Scrolls 6. I have very little hopes for Elder Scrolls 6 being a good game, and I have very little hopes for Starfield being a good game, because I know about the trajectory that Bethesda game software have been going in for the longest time. Now, why has it been going this way in the longest time? Well, quite simply, I can say that Fallout 4 is the worst game that Bethesda ever made. And then Fallout 76 came out, and it was the worst game Bethesda ever made. And before that, Skyrim was the worst game they ever made. And before that, Fallout 3 was the worst game they made. And then before that, Oblivion was the worst game they ever made. And then Morrowind was the worst game they ever made. And so it's been on this very slow but noticeable trajectory of games getting worse and worse and worse as they keep coming out more and more games. Now, how could Bethesda turn this ship around, turn this tide around, and actually start making decent games again? Well, fortunately, Microsoft has bought them out of control from ZeniMax, which means they actually may get some management issues and management money to create a better game engine for the studio, which could allow them to properly fix the spaghetti code of this aging, old, decrepit engine that has lots and lots of legacy bugs and issues and just not quite well designed design for these engines to work on modern systems. What I think they should do instead is take a leaf out of most other companies these days and completely dump the engine and find a new engine that was already created, such as, I don't know, the id Tech engine that has been made by their own company, id Tech. It is completely baffling to me that they don't use the engine that Doom Eternal and Doom 2016 uses. It's a fantastic engine and could easily serve their needs properly. But I understand that an RPG is fundamentally different to a first-person shooter, and there are lots of different issues that come with this. But if they're going to spend the time and money to improve an engine or change an engine, would you not want to use one that actually works and is incredible compared to continuing to use an old, decrepit piece of crap? I don't know. To me, it seems pretty simple. But I guess The powers that be have different minds for all of this crap. And it's not too late for Elder Scrolls 6 to change. I know they've been in development for 4 years and they've probably done a hell of a lot of work, and they don't really want to completely restart in a new engine, which has been a major problem for the Unreal Engine and Unreal developers of late, because they've been working on Unreal Engine 4 for so long, and now Unreal Engine 5 is out, and it's not as simple as people expected it to be to just switch from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, because Unreal Engine also has CPU scheduling issues, and the only people that have been able to make the CPU scheduling issues on Unreal Engine actually viable and workable have been Epic Games themselves in their Fortnite game. All other people who have been using the Unreal Engine has had massive problems with making the CPU actually work properly with the game. Most significantly for this would be the Star Wars Fallen Order and their newest game. It is, quite frankly, horrible what the Unreal Engine has been doing. But they don't need to use Unreal Engine because id Tech exists and they own the rights to id Tech. They could just simply start developing with it today and just completely restart from scratch the Elder Scrolls 6 development. Now, I say from scratch, but they probably would still be able to transfer over a lot of information, a lot of details. And by doing so, they can create a new engine specifically designed for their needs and capabilities with these RPGs, and could speed up development quite a bit once they change over, because they'll have dedicated tools designed specifically for creating quest, AI, and everything in between for their needs for the next 20 years, instead of using an engine and a piece of crap that's over 20 years old. Anyway, I hope this has been slightly informative to why Starfield has all of the bugs that it has, all of the issues that it has, and maybe with Microsoft in charge, we can start to see them changing their ways just a little bit. I'm Kris. Good day. Have a good one.